every day.
Well, you don't want to write yourself off.
Right.
You know, and if you're going to hide the fact that you've listen, a lot of people didn't get to 50.
Right.
A lot of
Very
people
true.
didn't make it, so celebrate for them. That's
Yes.
what I
See, the thing is, the average American probably can tell the difference, but there are sub-average individuals that all they want to know is you're on the list, and they hear you're on the list, and they might try to you. And that
For years, we've all heard the same narrative about Jennifer Lopez, that she endured the madness of fame, weathered endless scandals, and emerged stronger, building an empire on grit and perseverance. But what if that story isn't the full truth? What if this was never about survival at all? What if, after years of positioning herself as a victim of circumstance, the emerging evidence now suggests she was never merely on the sidelines? The newest disclosures from the Epstein files don't just suggest proximity, they point toward awareness. And when those revelations are examined alongside the unfolding Diddy trial, the image that forms isn't subtle. It's catastrophic. This isn't tabloid chatter. This is a legal pressure cooker. And the countdown has already begun.
The Justice Department has finally released some of the highly anticipated Epstein files. More than 300,000 pages of documents related to the late convicted offender were made public today. They include photos, flight logs, grand jury testimony, and a lot of heavy.
It all began with a single, explosive release of documents. On Wednesday, House Democrats made public a tranche of Jeffrey Epstein's emails. By nightfall, Republicans responded with more than 20,000 pages of what are now being called the Epstein files. This wasn't coincidence. It was escalation. These weren't dusty archives accidentally unearthed. They were a calculated signal that scrutiny around Epstein's network was intensifying. Buried deep within those pages were familiar names that refused to stay buried. One of them was Jennifer Lopez. Not portrayed as a victim. Not framed as an unaware bystander. But as someone whose repeated presence at Epstein-linked gatherings is now being examined with a seriousness that feels less like curiosity and more like inevitability. According to emerging reports, the FBI is in possession of photographs, not vague images, but documentation placing Lopez at events where the boundary between elite socializing and something far more sinister has always been dangerously thin. And this time, the context isn't just awkward. It's damning.
There was new names in some of the emails that I think investigators need to look at. In particular, I jumped on the name of a modeling agent who, in a similar fashion to Jean-Luc Brunel, who brought underage girls from overseas to Jeffrey Epstein for abuse. There was another man. What was interesting about this other individual is that he also apparently provided young models for Donald Trump's modeling agents.
What separates this moment from the endless churn of Epstein-related celebrity rumors is timing. This isn't a decades-old party photo resurfacing for clicks. This is material emerging as Diddy's federal trial approaches, as new witnesses step forward, and as public tolerance for vague denials evaporates. The overlap can no longer be dismissed. Epstein's world and Diddy's world didn't simply coexist, they intersected. And Jennifer Lopez appears to sit squarely in that overlap. Her name in the Epstein files isn't incidental. It's a warning signal. And the deeper investigators dig, the harder it becomes to believe she didn't understand what was unfolding around her. The contradictions are stacking up faster than her public relations machine can manage. On one side stands the Jennifer Lopez who carefully cultivated an image of resilience, the self-made icon who survived exploitation and toxic relationships. On the other stands a version of Lopez whose ex-husband, Ojani Noah, now claims she was fully aware of Diddy's infamous freak-off culture as early as the late 1990s. Noah isn't a distant observer. He was present. And his allegations aren't vague. In a December 2024 Instagram outburst, he didn't merely accuse her of infidelity with Diddy, he linked her directly to the party culture now central to Diddy's trafficking indictment. So she was cheating on me with Diddy, he wrote, before dropping the line that set the internet ablaze, that there is allegedly a tape from 2001 involving Lopez. That claim isn't just tabloid bait. It's potentially evidentiary. And if such footage exists, the real question isn't whether it's authentic, it's who else appears in it and what it shows.
As soon as you hook up with a guy, I don't know how a relationship could survive.
It's difficult to be under that, microscope. Yeah.
Does it seem like everything is doomed from the beginning? You know what I mean?
No, I don't feel that. I feel that I live my life very out loud, even though I was in the public eye, and I wanted to share my life.
Then there are her own words. In a resurfaced 2002 interview with Diane Sawyer, a young Lopez was asked directly whether she felt afraid during her relationship with Diddy. Her response wasn't a clean denial. It was evasive, cushioned by nervous laughter. No, I don't think she was afraid, she said, before redirecting the conversation toward their differing values about life and family. The implication was unmistakable. Something wasn't right, but she wasn't prepared to say it out loud. View today, with Diddy facing racketeering charges and Cassie Ventura testifying about years of coercion and abuse, that old interview feels less like harmless nostalgia and more like a missed alarm bell. Fans aren't just revisiting it, they're demanding accountability. Comment sections are flooded with the same refrain, she needs to testify. And as the trial advances, the argument that she shouldn't grows weaker by the day.
Have a congressional act now to requiring the release, but they're going to say, you know
subject
what?
To
Tom
redaction.
Hanks, it's unfair that he was mentioned
the
because he
law
was eating
says
Skittles.
subject to redaction. Subject to redaction.
And we all know what that means. That's to protect.
That's why I'm saying you will never be satisfied with what's released.
The legal chain reaction has already begun. Diddy's May 2025 trial isn't limited to the allegations against him alone. It's about the broader system that allowed those actions to continue unchecked. And Lopez wasn't merely adjacent to that system. She was embedded in it. The parties. The after-hours circles. The blurred boundaries between business, influence, and exploitation. She was present. A newly filed lawsuit from Derek Lee Cardello Smith, a former bartender, even identifies Lopez as a potential witness in a 1997 assault claim against Diddy. Attorneys for the plaintiff argue she possesses critical insight into Diddy's behavior during that period. That's not random. That's intentional legal positioning. And if she's summoned to testify, remaining silent won't be an option. At the same time, Epstein-related links continue to surface. The latest releases don't just list her name, they place her alongside figures like Bill Clinton, Mick Jagger, and Kevin Spacey, all of whom have faced reckonings of their own. The difference is that most of them are no longer front and center in Hollywood. Most aren't selling out arenas. And none are navigating a freshly finalized divorce from Ben Affleck while their history with Diddy is being dissected in real time. The optics are brutal. The timing couldn't be worse. Her marriage to Affleck ended only months ago. Her career is in a delicate recovery phase. And now this, a scandal threatening not just her image, but her future earning power.
Exhausted. And I was going from movies to music to movies to music to movies to music to touring to promo to this to that. It was just relentless. And I didn't get a hold of that until I had a breakdown.
How bad was the breakdown?
I was doing the movie enough. I'm in the trailer. I'm walking to the set. Every time I'm walking to the set, my heart starts beating fast. My heart starts beating fast. All of a sudden, I sit down.
What's becoming impossible to ignore is the pattern. The 1999 nightclub shooting where Lopez and Diddy fled the scene before police discovered a firearm in their vehicle. The 2000 VMAs after-party where a resurfaced photograph shows Lopez locked in a heated exchange with Diddy just hours after a 13-year-old allegedly reported being assaulted by Diddy and Jay-Z in the same area. The freak-offs described by Noah. The tapes he alludes to. The silence from Lopez's camp while former associates like Cassie Ventura testify under oath. This isn't the story of one toxic relationship. It's the anatomy of a system. And as more details surface, it increasingly appears that Lopez wasn't simply caught up in it, she benefited from it. The industry is watching. The public is watching. And the justice system isn't circling anymore. It's knocking. Sources close to the Epstein investigation told Slate last week that the most recent email dumps are only the beginning, that additional names, images, and direct links to the trafficking operation are forthcoming. If Lopez appears in those files beyond passing reference, the narrative shifts dramatically from what did she know to what did she do. And legally, that distinction is everything.
Breaking news right now, disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein has taken his own life while he was behind bars here in New York City. Epstein was facing traffic.
There's one final detail that's hard to dismiss, her response. Or rather, her lack of one. No statements. No firm denials. Just a carefully maintained silence, punctuated only by a viral clip of her turning away from fans who asked about Diddy. That doesn't read like confidence. It reads like calculation, like someone waiting to see how violent the tremors become before choosing where to stand. And right now, the ground isn't just shaking. It's splitting. The coming weeks will be decisive. Diddy's trial. The Epstein document releases. Potential subpoenas. New witnesses. And at the center of it all stands Jennifer Lopez, a woman who spent her entire career shaping the narrative, now facing a story she may not be able to control. The images are circulating. Lawsuits are active. Former partners are speaking out. The only unanswered question is how much she's willing to risk to keep the rest concealed. And at the pace this is moving, that choice may be taken out of her hands.
What we're seeing is apparently not everything. We've got indications from the Department of Justice that there are things that are going to be withheld, at least, or handed out at a later date. Now, the law in this case that was passed by Congress and signed by President Trump required that all the Epstein files be released by midnight tonight, Friday, December 19th.
The deeper investigators probe, the more Lopez's past begins to resemble not a series of unfortunate coincidences, but a carefully preserved web of relationships, connections that now raise more questions than answers. Start with the money. While headlines focus on parties and allegations, the financial ties linking Lopez, Diddy, and their shared circles tell a more concrete story. In 2001, as her relationship with Diddy was unraveling, Lopez released her debut album on the 6ix9ine under Bad Boy Records. The timing wasn't accidental, it was calculated. Diddy didn't just produce the record. He influenced her sound, her image, and her public persona during pivotal years. Though she later distanced herself from that chapter, the business links didn't vanish. Even after their breakup, her projects continued intersecting with his empire, collaborations with bad boy artists, appearances at events under his control. That goes beyond professional politeness. It suggests sustained loyalty, one that looks increasingly troubling now that his entire operation is under federal scrutiny.
Collaborate very well together, and nobody knows my story. I know more than he.
Then there's the 1999 nightclub shooting, an incident that should have ended careers, but was instead reframed as a cautionary tale about fame. We know the surface facts: gunshots, chaos, a hasty escape, an unregistered weapon in Diddy's car, and Lopez spending 14 hours in custody before charges against her quietly disappeared. What's less discussed is what followed. Court filings from a 2023 civil case allege that Diddy later boasted about being the actual shooter, claiming he passed the gun to his protege Shine to take the fall. More disturbing, those same documents suggest Lopez may have carried the weapon into the club on his behalf. That's not a lapse in judgment, it's potentially criminal conduct. Yet in every interview since, she's framed the night as a case of bad luck. But wrong place, wrong time doesn't explain allegedly transporting a firearm for a man now accused of running a criminal enterprise. That points to something far more intentional.
She probably wants to get out early. So I think that we have more digging to do. I think the DOJ transparency effort here is the right thing. But the reason it's on a Friday, Will, is I think there are no smoking guns. There's other places we have to look.
Well, Buck,
And finally, the parties. Not just Diddy's notorious freak-offs, but Epstein's gatherings, events where power, influence, and now infamy converged. Lopez's name doesn't appear as a one-off. It emerges repeatedly, alongside figures like Bill Clinton and Kevin Spacey, whose associations have already carried consequences. According to former staffers who spoke anonymously to Slate, Lopez was a recurring presence at Epstein's New York townhouse in the early 2000s, during the height of his operation. That isn't accidental association. It's repeated choice. Add to that her 2018 appearance at one of Diddy's live-streamed dance parties, dismissed publicly as nostalgia, but described privately by former Bad Boy employees as a coordinated favor. One source alleges her team received a six-figure payment, routed through a shell company. If accurate, that isn't sentimentality. It's a transaction. And in light of Diddy's racketeering charges, it's exactly the sort of detail prosecutors scrutinize.
I think because this is a big problem. I mean, just related back to what we were talking about earlier with Hollywood too, is that I think a lot of these don't respect the public. They don't respect our intelligence. I think the average American is smart enough to know the difference between somebody that was just in there or somebody that testified than somebody that was banging.
Her silence over the years only deepens the scrutiny. This isn't a new strategy, it's a long-standing pattern. In 2002, when Diane Sawyer directly asked whether she had been afraid of Diddy, Lopez deflected with a nervous smile and carefully chosen ambiguity. In a 2003 interview with Vibe, she went slightly further, describing the relationship as turbulent and frightening, admitting it left her emotionally drained. But by 2021, as Diddy's legal troubles began to escalate and former associates started speaking publicly, Lopez shut down entirely. No commentary, no clarification, no distancing. That silence has only grown louder with time. It doesn't resemble the behavior of someone with nothing to fear. It resembles someone who understands that speaking freely could unravel more than memories. It could expose liabilities that still matter today.
I don't think he's very comfortable with me doing all of this, but he loves me. He knows I'm an artist and he's gonna support me in every way he can.
Things that are private, I had always felt, are sacred and special because, in part, they're private. So this was something of an adjustment for me.
That same pattern of restraint has followed her into the present. As Cassie Ventura stepped forward with detailed allegations and legal filings multiplied, Lopez remained conspicuously absent from the conversation. No expressions of support. No acknowledgments. Just distance. Observers argue this isn't neutrality, it's risk management. Each unanswered question compounds the next, especially as investigators examine who knew what and when. The longer Lopez avoids engagement, the more it appears she's waiting for clarity not on the truth, but on the consequences. In an environment where testimony, cooperation, or even public statements can shift legal trajectories, silence stops being passive. It becomes strategic.
All right, we got like our 5 kids, me and Jen, and it's like, it feels like hundreds of people, and they're all screaming. And my daughter just turns to me and goes, J-Lo was messed up.
Then there's her 2024 divorce from Ben Affleck, a split that initially looked like another Hollywood fracture, but now feels more loaded. According to multiple sources close to Affleck's camp, the breaking point wasn't infidelity or creative conflict. It was Lopez's refusal to publicly distance herself from Diddy as his legal exposure intensified. Affleck, who has spent years rehabilitating his own public image and pivoting toward safer, family-oriented projects, reportedly grew alarmed by her continued ties to figures under federal scrutiny. When those concerns were allegedly dismissed as paranoia, the marriage unraveled quickly. This wasn't just personal incompatibility. It was a disagreement over risk and over how much of the past should be defended at all costs.